Okay. Coming to fungi under classification. Okay. So when it comes to fungi, basically we know that fungi are all multicellular, isn't it? They're all multicellular. Except there is just one exception of yeast. Yeast is a fungi and yeast is unicellular. I hope you know that. Okay. So yeast basically, which is used for they are just one single cell. So yeast is the only exception in fungi wherein yeast is unicellular, rest of all of them are multicellular. So what is multicellular? They are made up of many cell types. All right. Unicellular is one single cell. Now, coming to the first, let's come to the structure and then let's come to the classification of fungi. So when it comes to the structure of the fungi, okay, if you can see, they have these long strand-like structures. Okay, so these long strand-like structures, what you can see here, they're called as the hyphae. Long strand-like structures are called as hyphae. Now, hyphae can have septum in between them. So if there is septum, okay, septum is nothing but a partition. So if there's a septum in between, okay, then it looks like as if there is a cell, it looks like as if there is one nuclei in every cell. Can you see here? So because of a septum, it looks like as if there is a single nucleus. Okay, so any hyphae that you see which has a septum, we call such a hyphae as a septate hyphae. You got this point? So if there is a septum, we call it as a septate hyphae. And this septate hyphae, if you see here, we see that they are uninucleated. Uninucleated. What is the meaning of uninucleated? One nucleus in every cell, isn't it? It looks like as if there's one nucleus in every cell. Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. On the other hand, okay, if you look at this particular hyphae here, which has no septum, so if there is no septum, we call it as aseptate. And aseptate hyphae are also called as cenocytic hyphae. Okay, cenocytic, very important for NEET. Now, cenocytic hyphae looks like as if, there are many nuclei in just one cell, correct? So we also call them as multinucleated. What's the difference, no? Between uninucleate and multinucleate? Clear with this part?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Let's come to the next part. We've understood all this about the fungi. Cenocytic is very important, okay? Let's come to the structure here. Okay. One more thing I'll tell you. For example, if I have many hyphae, okay, network of hyphae. So this is a network of hyphae that is called as the mycelium. Okay, so if you have many hyphae, okay, the network of hyphae is called as a mycelium. So if you look at this picture here down, okay, so here, basically what you can see, this is your hyphae, this one. We also call it as a stolon. But if you have many hyphae, we call it as network of hyphae is called as a mycelium. All right. Many such structures if you have. So this is that one, horizontal hyphae, what you have. So many such will be called as a mycelium. Now let's come to the structure of a fungi. I'm giving you the basic structure of a fungi first, okay? So when it comes to the basic structure of a fungi, as I said, there is a hyphae, correct? So this is your hyphae. Now, anything which protrudes out of the hyphae, I'm going to be calling it as the phore. Okay, so I'm going to be using some word before it, and I'm going to be using it as a phore. For example, if I say spongiophore. So what is a phore? Phore is this vertical tube which arises. Got it? So I'm going to be using some word and phore. For example, spongiophore or basiophore. Okay, or conidiophore. So accordingly, I'll be using, this word conidio, basidio. Based on a particular group of fungi, I'll be using either this word or spongio. But what is a phore? Any tube which comes out. Then this tube will give me a cap-like structure. Can you see this? So this cap-like structure, I call it as the, okay. So you see the cap-like structure. Can you see this? Geum will be the used. So this entire cap-like structure will be called as the sporangium. Sporangium. Sporangium is a cup sac-like structure. Now, this sporangium makes spores. The spores, if they're inside, okay, spores are nothing but reproductive structures. So spores, if they're inside, we use the word endospores. But if spores are released out, we call them as exospores. This part understood? So cap is a sporangium, okay? Spores were produced inside. So this is the basic structure, what you need to know. Also keep in mind, sometimes spores can be produced here in the phore. In the phore, you could have some spores produced. Okay. So accordingly, I'll tell you where spores are produced and all, and what kind of spores are present. Is this part understood, basic structure?
Yes, ma'am.
These are nuclei. Okay, these are your nuclei. Yeah. Can I go to the next part?
Yes, ma'am.
Acha. Okay, so these spores, endospores, but they're produced in the sporangium, no? So I can also call them as what? Sporangiospores. You got it? Spores are the reproductive structures. These are actually the reproductive structures, because when they go and fall on some other substratum, no, any medium, they again start growing. All right? No. I'll give you a rough idea about the reproduction part, reproduction in fungi. Okay? General steps. Now, as I told you, there could be two cells, okay, of the fungi. This is the nuclei. Okay? So this is cell A, okay, and this is cell B. So when it comes to two fungi, so this is first fungi and this is the second fungi. Okay, they're involved in reproduction. Either they could be cells or they could be spores. They could be cells or they could be spores, correct? Which are involved in reproduction. Now, usually what happens is when these spores, they come together, when these two cells fuse, when the two cells fuse, the two nucleus, if you see one, I'll label it in green. The two nucleus, they usually do not fuse. Okay. So what you end up getting is a dikaryon stage. So if you look at, the general reproduction structure, I'll just tell you. So reproduction fungi, first step, write it down. First step is called as plasmogamy. Plasmogamy. Now what is plasmogamy? When the cytoplasm of two gametes, okay, so these are spores or cells, or we can also call them as the gametes. So plasmogamy is nothing but fusion of the cytoplasm. Fusion of the cytoplasm of two gametes. Gametes or the two cells, okay? So can you see here? The cytoplasm is fused, and because of which, so this is the first step, which is nothing but plasmogamy has happened here. Now, if you look at the stage here, no, this is a dikaryon stage. Dikaryon. What do you mean by karyon? Karyon is nucleus. Okay. So this is a dikaryon stage wherein there are two nuclei present, correct? So if these two nuclei fuse, we call it as karyogamy. We call it as karyogamy. So karyogamy will be what? The second stage. Karyo means nucleus. Gamy means fusion. Okay, so karyo means nuclei. Gamy means fusion. So next stage, what will happen is these two will end up fusing each other. Okay, so the two nuclei have fused, correct? So what you end up getting is, if these cells were haploid and haploid, this is a diploid stage, correct? This is an N plus N stage, dikaryon stage. This is a diploid stage. So fusion of two nuclei. Fusion of two nuclei. That is karyogamy, isn't it? So this diploid here, we also call it as the zygote, which is formed. This is a zygote which is formed. Now, this zygote will undergo meiosis. This will undergo meiosis, which is the third stage. When they undergo meiosis, what you end up getting is further cells are formed. We call them as spores. They are all haploid. Okay, so haploid spores are formed. So all these are the steps. Reproduction, no? So this is sexual reproduction stages. 3 stages is what you should know of. Have you understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so if you've understood reproduction fungi, I will first tell you about classification now. And classification is very important for NEET. Make a note and tell me once you finished.
Done, ma'am.
Okay. Come to classification. Now, entire classification is based on most important thing, whether sexual reproduction is absent or present. Okay, so here sexual reproduction, if it is absent, and sexual reproduction, of course, present. Sexual reproduction absent, you have one group which is called as Deuteromycetes. Deuteromycetes. This is one group, okay? Deuteromycetes. We also call them as fungi imperfecti. Imperfecti. So what are Deuteromycetes? Any organism, any fungi whose sexual reproduction is not known. We put them under this group. Understood? So entire criteria for classification is what? What is the criteria for classifying these two groups? Noting sexual reproduction, whether it is present or not. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So if sexual reproduction is present, then we have two more groups. One, based on if they have a mycelium. If the mycelium is aseptate, okay, which you already know what is aseptate and septate. And if the mycelium here is septate. If mycelium is present, septate, we put them into a higher category called as Eumycota. Mycota means fungi. U means true. True fungi. Right? And if they do not have a septum, we put them under Eumycota. These are lower fungi. These are higher fungi. Higher organisms, highly evolved. Under this, again, we have two more under, Eumycota. One is Phycomycitis. Phycomycitis, also called as Eumycetes. This is Eumycota, okay? This is Eumycetes, also called as algal fungi because they look like algae. Next is Zykomycitis. Also called as conjugation fungi. Here you have Ascomycetes. These are all higher, okay? Ascomycetes. Basidiomycetes. Mushrooms, what do you eat, no? They come under Basidiomycetes. This is called as a sac fungi. This is called as a club fungi. Very important, okay? These names. This is algal fungi. This is conjugation fungi. This is a sac fungi. This is a club fungi. Have you got the main categories, main classes of fungi?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, I'll tell you about types of sexual reproduction. Okay. Types of sexual reproduction. So, based on, now the criteria is what, for example, I'll tell you first. Let's say we are talking about two spores. Okay. Let's say the sexual reproduction part only. In sexual reproduction, I told you gametes are involved, correct? Or spores. Gametes are involved. Based on the structure of the gametes. Let's say I have a male, sorry, this is a female, and I have a male. Let's say the female is smaller and has a flagellum, and male is also of the same size and has a flagellum. Don't you think both the gametes are similar in size? So gametes are similar in morphology, correct? Similar in morphology, which means if this one is round, no flagella, this one is also the same size, same morphology, correct? We call such a type of reproduction as isogamy. Isogamy. Iso means what? Same. Gamy means fusion. That means the fusing gametes are same. Are same in morphology. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now see. Let's say the female is bigger. Male is smaller. Or if the female is bigger, male is smaller and has a flagellum. I call this as anisogamy. So what is anisogamy? An means different. The different morphology. Correct? One is bigger, one is smaller. Who's bigger usually? Female. Got it? And last one, what you're left with is oogamy. In oogamy, compulsorily the female is bigger, male is smaller. Okay? Now you see here, you know what? The female is also usually can be motile, okay? Here. But in oogamy, compulsorily the male is smaller and is flagellated. Female is never flagellated. This is in case of humans. Example, if I say humans also have this, fungi also has this. Humans reproduce by oogamy. This is seen in fungi also, of course. Have you got it? Female is large, non-motile. Non-motile means what? No flagellum. This one is smaller and motile. Have you got this?
Yes, ma'am.
So fungi can reproduce by any of these methods, iso and iso-oogamy. So what we are learning is, you know, we have made this chart, correct? So we'll be learning Ascomycetes reproduced by what, Basidiomycetes reproduced by what, iso-oo or what, Zykomycetes reproduced by this or this or this. Understood? What spores do they make? What spores does this one make? Have you got this part? It's that simple if you understand this overall. Okay? Now, I'll tell you one more thing. Okay. I'll tell you about the asexual reproduction now. Asexual reproduction in fungi. This was all sexual, huh? Because there are gametes, males and females, correct? Asexual reproduction, well, will there be males and females? No, right? In asexual reproduction fungi, are there males and females? No, correct? So in asexual reproduction, we speak only about spores. And there are two types of spores. One is conidia. Okay. So under this, what we have is zoospores. We have conidia. And we have sporangiospores. Sporangiospores. Zoospores are motile. If they're motile, that means don't you think they have a flagella? Conidia is non-motile. This is also non-motile. Have you understood this?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, come back to this chart here. In sexual reproduction, you remember I was telling you about this dikaryon formed and all, and this zygote which is formed. I can call this zygote as zygospores also. Or in some, like, under some category, we also call them as these zygospores here. Can you see? You also call them as oospores. Or you can just cut this for now, okay? That's okay. You can just cut this for now. I'll tell you when I'm doing every category. Okay, so just hold on. You just keep it as zygote only. That's okay. I'll tell you when I'm doing each of these. So I think this part will have understood, right? Asexual reproduction also.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now coming to the desktop here, now I'll tell you about from a textbook. Okay, I'll just tell you how to read this entire thing. With regards to fungi. Okay. Examples, you'll have to know them, okay, under this. So fungi, so you know these terms, right? What are saprophytes? What are parasites? Yes? Now, next very important thing, the cell wall of fungi is composed of chitin and polysaccharide. Chitin is also a type of polysaccharide, okay? So keep in mind, chitin is present where chitin and polysaccharides, they're present in the cell wall of fungi. Very important point for NEET. I told you about septum, correct? Multinucleated, mycelium, hyphae, all this is done, correct? Yeast is unicellular. Rest of all the fungi are multicellular. You remember these points?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Fungi is heterotrophic. Under heterotrophs, you can have saprophytes or parasites. Okay. Now, next is, so fungi, no, they're very smart. They live in a symbiotic association with algae. So they become friends with algae, and that association is called as a lichen. Okay. So basically fungi plus algae is called as what? Association. Together they are called as lichens. So because they cannot make their own food, they get food from algae and they give protection to the algae. Okay, that is called as a symbiotic relationship. I give you something, you give me something back in return. And fungi is also smart. They also form an association with the roots of higher plant. So if you have the roots of higher plant, no, fungi go and reside in these roots. That association is called as mycorrhizae. Got it? So fungi plus roots of higher plants. That association is called as what? Mycorrhiza. So when they live in the roots, they give protection to the roots so that, fungi is very smart. They start making some antibiotics and all, okay? They secrete some chemicals and they don't allow bacteria and all to come and damage the root. And when they get into get inside the root, they get food from these roots. Okay, so fungi also helps the plant, get some nourishment and all. Is this part clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next important point, when it comes to these books here, I told you fungi can reproduce by vegetative reproduction, that is by fragmentation, fission, or by budding. Okay. And asexual reproduction, I told you by spores, correct? This is what I just told you. Can you see here? They can either form conidia or spongiospores or zoospores. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
When it comes to sexual reproduction, I told you the types of sexual reproduction, but the types of spores which are formed in sexual reproduction are oospores, ascospores, or basidiospores. Have you got it? So here I told you that this is asexual reproduction, correct? But in sexual reproduction, what are the spores? Spores could be oospores. They could be basidiospores. Or what is the last one? Ascospores, correct? This is all sexual reproduction. These are all asexual reproduction. Got this part? Here, these points? Now, fruiting body. You remember I told you the picture here that you get a carp. You remember I told you that there's a 4 and the 4 will give you one sporangium, correct? Now, actually, no, this fruiting body, this part is called as a fruiting body. The fruiting body, we usually call it as a carp. So what is a fruiting body? Carp. I can call it as an ascocarp or basidiocarp. Okay, so this is actually a fruiting body, and inside that, if I get sac-like structures, big sac-like structures which are spores inside, sac is called as what? Sporangium. Sporangium is actually a sac, okay? And this fruiting body is called as a carp. Have you understood the difference? So spores are produced inside distinct structures called as carp, and they are placed inside a sac. The sac is called as a sporangium. Got it? Fruiting body is a carp. Now, see, very important thing is, when I told you this division, this classification, can you see Zykomycitis? So don't you think here I will use the word ascocarp, ascospores? So whichever species of fungi come under Zykomycitis, I will use the word ascocarp and ascospores here. Don't you think? This is Basidiomycetes. So don't you think I'll use the word basidiocarp here to the fruiting body? And I will be using the word basidiospores for the spores made by species of this group. Have you got? Sumitra, have you got this point? When I can use the word ascocarp, carp is the same, but I'm using the word asco for all those fungi coming under the group Zykomycetes, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So under Zykomycetes, example of species, if I say penicillium comes under what? Zykomycetes. Aspergillus. Penicillium makes penicillin. I hope you know that. Aspergillus species comes under Zykomycetes. So don't you think penicillium, which is a fungi, in case if they make a carp, I will call their carp as ascocarp, and the spores will be called as ascospores. Mushroom comes under Basidiomycetes. So don't you think the fruiting body of the mushroom, I will call it as the basidiocarp, and the spores produced will be called as basidiospores. Got it? How simple this is?
Yes, ma'am.
Achha. Okay. So this is the whole thing. The full chapter only is, if you understand these basic concepts, you'll understand the whole thing. Simple? Now is it simple for you, the full fungi chapter?
Yes, ma'am.
Achha. I'll tell you some more points. So I told you about plasmogamy. I told you about karyogamy also, correct? Karyogamy. Karyo means nucleus. Gamy means fusion. After fusion, you get a zygote. Zygote will undergo meiosis and give you haploid spores. Got this? These are the steps in sexual cycle. 3 important steps, very important for NEET. Now see down, okay, here. I told you about dikaryon stage, which is 2 nuclei per cell. But you know who gives this dikaryon stage? Only Ascomycetes and Basidiomycetes. The last two, higher fungi. Only they give you a typical dikaryon stage. Nobody else gives you a dikaryon stage. So if a question is asked, penicillium and mushroom, do they show a dikaryon stage? Who shows dikaryon stage? Only Ascomycetes and Basidiomycetes group. Under Ascomycetes, penicillium comes. Under Basidiomycetes, mushroom comes. So my question to you, Sumitra, is, does penicillium and mushroom show a dikaryon stage?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, very good. Make a note of it. Okay, so only these two here. Can you see? These show a dikaryon stage. This one also shows you a dikaryon stage. Got it? This is how you need to read every sentence. Only then you'll be able to clear your NEET exams, okay? Have you understood this part?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now let's come to Phycomycitis. First group, algal fungi. Remember? Now, where they are present is, you should be reading like damp, decaying wood. They're obligate parasites. What do you mean by obligate? Compulsory, correct? Compulsory parasites. Asexual reproduction by zoospores or by aplanospores. Zoospores, and one more thing you can write, aplanospores are nothing but non-motile. So how do they reproduce asexually? By zoospores, which are motile, or by aplanospores. Their spores are produced endogenously. What do you mean by endogenous? Inside the sporangium. So don't you think they make endospores? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When, in case of Phycomycitis, no, when you have two gametes, when two gametes fuse, what do you end up getting? You get a structure called as zygospore. So question could be asked, a zygospore which is 2n. Okay, this is n and n. So zygospore structure is formed by the fusion of two gametes. So zygospore structure is formed where? In which particular class? In Phycomycitis. Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Their gametes can be similar in morphology. If they're similar in morphology, isogamous, or dissimilar. It can be anisogamous or oogamous. Now you know these terms. Yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Example, mucor, rhizopus, albugo. It's a parasitic fungi on mustard. So the question could be, does mucor show zygospore? Does
Yes.
mucor show zygospore? Yes. Does rhizopus show zygospore? Yes. You got the point?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. This is what you should know first. This basic thing, you first read it and register in your head. You got it? Then, slowly you can build and read a little more about mucor, rhizopus and all. This basic thing first you should know. Got it? That is how you start preparing for NEET.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? And you know what? Don't concentrate much on your school and your board thing, and get rid of maths as soon as possible. You have to score 350 or 360 in botany zoology. So Mitra, now or never.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you solving those books which I've given you? No? Can you Xerox and
Yes,
give me the books, please?
Yeah, okay, ma'am.
Okay. When are you giving me? Please tell, because I have to return them. Okay.
I'll give you on Tuesday.
All right. Yeah, will do. Okay. Now, Ascomycetes again. Penicillium, I told you. Correct? Yeast. Yeast also belongs to Ascomycetes. The name of yeast is, okay, yeast is called as, do you know the scientific name of yeast? Saccharomyces cerevisiae. This is the scientific name of what? Yeast. Saccharomyces cerevisiae. They're saprophytic, they're decomposers, they could be parasitic, or they could be coprophilous. Coprophilous means they grow on dung, cow dung. I told you that I would be giving you a test, no? Which was a chapter?
Yes, ma'am. Digestion and excretion.
Okay, when do I give you? Are you ready for that chapter test today?
I'm ready for digestion.
You're ready for digestion. Okay. So digestion by 5:30, 5 o'clock, should I send you a paper?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Digestion full, I'll send you.
Okay, ma'am.
Remind me, if I don't send you, just remind me.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah. So example you've seen here. Okay. Same thing, based on that, you'll have to read asexual spores in case of Ascomycetes. Asexual spores are called as conidia. They are produced exogenously. What is exogenously? Outside. Correct? On special mycelium called as conidiophores. What are conidiophores? I told you 4 means what? This is a conidiophore, correct? This is conidiophore. Inside, for example, if spores are produced, from here outside, what do I call it as? Exogenous. So conidia, asexual spores are conidia. So these spores that you can see here, what are these called as? Conidia. Correct? Conidia is a spore which is produced asexually. Where are these spores, conidia, produced? In which part of the fungi? In the conidiophore. Got it? I told you, no, fungi has got mycelium, and I told you that this part is called as a phore. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So this will be called as a conidiophore if I'm talking about Ascomycetes. So spores are produced here and they're released out. So these spores are called as conidia. Very important for NEET, this one. So Mitra, this is scoring. 6 questions could be asked here. 6 fours are 24 marks a year in this particular chapter. Okay. So these conidia, if they further germinate, if they fall again on some, some substance material, they again produce mycelium. They again start growing. So what this conidia will do is, they again, if they start, again they'll grow into a new fungi. Got it? So conidia and germination produce again mycelium. Sexual spores are called as ascospores. And they're produced endogenously in a sac-like structure called as SI. So what is ascus? Carp. So where are ascospores produced? Inside the sac. These are ascospores. Got it? So they're produced inside the sac-like structures. Each of the sac is called as what? SI. And full carp will be called as what? Ascocarp, fruiting body. Are you getting it? See, full body is what? This part here, this part is ascocarp, correct? Sac is called as what now? I'm going to call the sac as SI. Inside SI, what is produced endogenously? Endogenously, no? What are these inside?
Psychospores.
Very good. Simple, no? This is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Example, aspergillus, penicillin, claviceps, neurospora. Neurospora, this particular fungi is so important because all work, major work of genetic biochemical work is done on neurospora. Many more examples are morels and truffles. These are edible. You can eat these. They also come under Ascomycetes. Read this and just register this in your heads, sentence by sentence. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Have you got now? What is a carp? What is endospore, exospore? What is a phore? Conidia, if you see here. Okay. They are asexual. Conidia is asexual, I told you. So this chart you remember again. I've already given you this chart, no? Conidia is what? Asexual spore. And what is ascospore? Sexual reproduction. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Let's come to the last group, which is Basidiomycetes. Under this, you'll have mushroom. Okay, mushroom comes under this. So if you see here, Basidiomycetes, mushroom, bracket fungi, puffballs. Okay, they are parasites. Rust and smuts also. These are also rust and smuts, no? They are also Basidiomycetes, okay? Question could be asked here. Septate. Asexual spores are not found generally, but vegetative reproduction by fragmentation is common. No sex organs, but plasmogamy takes place. Okay, so the somatic cells come together, and that is how there will be plasmogamy. Plasmogamy means the cytoplasm of the two vegetative cells come together. So you get a dikaryotic stage. Can you see? A dikaryotic stage is very important. Okay. The spores which are formed here. So there is dikaryon stage, karyogamy, meiosis. And finally, you get basidiospores. Basidios formed exogenously outside on the basidium. The fruiting body is called as a basidiocarp. The way you had an SI, no, here you have a basidium. So question could be endogenously produced or exogenously produced. What is the fruiting body of a mushroom? Mushroom is agaricus. Ustilago is a smut. And rust is Puccinia. Very, very important. Okay. So here again in mushrooms, the carp will be called as what? Carp is called as a basidiocarp. Sac will be called as basidia. And inside the spores will be called as basidiospores. Got it? Simple?
Yes, ma'am.
Achha. Okay. Last one, Deuteromycetes, imperfect fungi. Now, for example, you become a biologist and you get a fungi somewhere in the jungle, and you don't know the sexual reproduction. You don't know how this fungi reproduces sexually. What you'll do is you'll put it in this group called as Deuteromycetes. So what is Deuteromycetes? It is a group whose only asexual and vegetative phases are known, but sexual reproduction is not known. Got it? So what is Deuteromycetes? Those fungi whose sexual reproduction is not known. But tomorrow, if you come to know, okay, so and so is the, sexual reproduction, then you can move it out of Deuteromycetes and put it, and you can move it to Ascomycetes or Basidiomycetes once you discover them. So once you know the sexual stage, you can remove it out of the Deuteromycetes and put it under Asco or Basidio. So Deuteromycetes reproduce only by asexual mechanism, by conidia. They're saprophytes of parasites. Decomposers also. Example here, Alternaria, Trichoderma, very important. Okay. So what are Deuteromycetes? They are sexual reproduction not known. So what is known? Asexual and reproductive or vegetative is known. Got this point?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, let's come to Protista now. Okay, you can, I'll give you a 10-minute break. Log in sharp at around 12, okay? 12 or 2 or something.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.